Hi, I'm Marc, host and creator of Get to the Joke, a web series that is a masterclass in the art of stand-up comedy. I hope you find today's episode to be both fun and helpful, and you can help me out by subscribing to my YouTube channel and liking the video, and feel free to drop a comment. I'll be happy to get back to you. Alright, well, let's get to the joke. Hi, I'm Marc, a comedian from Philadelphia.
As you can probably imagine how much going on right now. I can tell you the most exciting thing I had going on this week was my buddy called me up. He was like, "Hey Marc, found this cat outside." So I neutered him, gave him his shots, and I rescued this cat. You want to come over and see my cat? Well, I got nothing better to do. I'll drive 45 minutes to come see this cat. Showed this guy's house, cat's not even there. I go, "Dude, where's this cat go?" He goes, "Oh, it's an outdoor cat." Outdoor cat? Let me get this straight, fella. You found a cat outside, cut its balls off, and put it right back outside. Seems like a pretty raw deal for that cat. Story has another turn. This guy has two other cats. They're both house cats. Now how's an outdoor cat feel? It's like, "Oh, outdoor cat, don't be coming in here. See all this food and air conditioning and love? That's not for you. You get right back outside, you outside cat." Now I know how Cooper Manning feels. Nobody. All right. For those who don't know, Cooper Manning is Eli and Peyton Manning's other brother. There's a reason you never heard about Cooper Manning, because nobody cares about Cooper Manning. He's an outdoor cat.
And today's guest is Chantry, the 2013 winner of Philly's Funniest and overall one of the best comics I ever worked with. Chip has produced 2 outstanding comedy albums, which you can find links to in the show notes below. And he also has the popular podcast Chip, Marry, Kill. This episode is one of my favorites that I've done. Chip just gives it all away. I mean, I've learned so much just by doing the interview and listening to it again. This is, if you're looking to get in stand-up comedy, or if you've been in stand-up comedy for a few years or many years, you will find something to help improve the way you develop and write jokes in this episode. Chip was the best, and I just learned so much from Chip. This quintessentially is what this web series is about. So grab a pen and paper, take some notes, and let's get to the episode.
I saw this the other day too. This is the most bizarre thing I've ever seen in my entire life. I was walking down the street and I was walking past a nail salon. And apparently they do waxings at this nail salon, like hair removal for women. And the weird part about this was that there was a big sign in the front window that was a menu of all the types of waxings they do with the prices. So it was like facial waxing, $10, underarm, $17. And then it said bikini wax, $25 and up. And up is the part that got me, because I've never had bikini wax, but I'd have to assume it's a fairly awkward and embarrassing proposition, as it is, let alone estimates and haggling. How does that go down? Like, what's a clerk come out to the waiting room with a clipboard? He's like, "Look, Mrs. Anderson, I know we quoted you $25, but Jimmy just took a look at it, and it's pretty banged up. Parts and labor loans to release 50, I will tell you." That happens.
Hey.
What's up, man?
Hey, not too much, man. How are you doing?
Yeah, I can hear you great. How am I?
Good, good. You're good on my end. I ran into some technical issues with
Good, man. Good. You
David
hear
James.
me?
So,
Oh,
so I was just making sure that we were okay here. So, I like that. Is that a CD collection
yeah,
behind
yeah,
you?
man. This is my old CD collection. I have nothing to play besides my car, I guess. But I can't get rid of them. I can't bear to leave them. Yeah, it goes all the way up to the ceiling. So yeah, so that's fine. I got some DVDs up there too. So
Dude, that's
yeah,
awesome, man. Dude,
there's my teens and twenties right there.
Dude, that looks great, man. I have the same thing, but they're in a storage like a storage container now because the same problem you
Yeah,
have.
yeah.
So, first of all, I've done quite extensive research on you. I don't want to repeat questions that have already been asked to you. So, I'm going to show note a
Oh,
link
wow.
to a Philly Blunt podcast you did where you talked about what got you into comedy, your first open mic. I'm not going to ask you those questions again. But I kind of want to
Okay.
get
Okay.
back into your early life a little bit to try to figure out kind of. I feel like comics are a special breed of humans, and why is
Yeah.
it that we do what we do? And I know that you mentioned that you were fascinated with MTV's half-hour comedy stand-up specials.
Favorite. It is my favorite thing in the world. Yeah. It was every weeknight. I want to say at 7 o'clock, from 7 to 7:30.
Yeah,
And it was I think for most of the run, Mario Joyner was the host, and
yeah,
that's just I knew Mario Joyner just from that. And then of course, I think kind of his more claim to fame is like he was Seinfeld's opener forever. Like he was good friends with Seinfeld. But I would record those. Just like have a VCR tape in and just record them and watch them. And it was the half-hour comedy hours, half hour. He hosted it, and then I think there was usually like three comics on, so
yeah.
it'd be like three 7 minute, 6 7 minute sets, whatever, and him, and is my favorite thing in the world. Like I loved it, looking back, and I wish I had that tape still. Not
Yeah.
again, not that I have anything to play it on,
Yeah.
but I'm sure there were some terrible comics and very 80s comics. It was like this would be like late 80s, early 90s. There would be some terrible comics, but then there was like. I remember Norm Macdonald and Dana Gould and the amazing Jonathan. These great
Amazing
comic, a young Doug Benson. Who I remember because I know Doug a little bit. Like I've been on the Doug Goes Movies podcast a couple times, and I saw an old clip of him from I think that show, and I remembered his jokes word for word, but I didn't know it was him because it's been 30 years. So it was like, oh, that guy did those jokes, but it's a totally different guy than Doug Benson is today. Like I didn't even register, but yeah, I was obsessed. Like it was my favorite, and I was 10 years old, maybe 11 years old, and just loved it.
So you go from watching that and just becoming obsessed with just that people go up there and tell jokes, and then your brother's band puts you on as their opening stand-up without you even knowing, but. From what I've heard, the reason that they even put you up there is because you wouldn't stop talking about wanting to do stand-up comedy. It's almost like they put your feet to the fire, like we're gonna throw you in the deep end kind of thing. But to walk me to the middle,
think that's what it was.
yeah, put me in the middle part
Yeah.
between MTV Comedy Hour and your brother's band. Why was it important that you were like stand-up comedy? Like why? I know your brother's older. I don't know if there's like an attention thing. I know he's
No,
like.
he's actually younger.
Oh, he's younger than
He
you.
seems older,
Okay.
more mature. He's the younger brother. Yeah. But he has it together. So, honestly, I remember, and I'm pretty sure this. You have these like very weird memories of being a toddler or whatever. And I remember being in the back seat of my dad's old 1972 Chevy Malibu, and he had an 8-track player. Like we're hitting all of the old media platforms tonight, but 8-track player. And we were driving, and he turned the radio on, and the 8-track player was like already playing, I guess. And it was, I'm 99% sure, it was George Carlin. It was his, and I forget what, I don't know, Class Clown or which album was, but it was the 7 Dirty Words, and like hearing the F word, and like I remember thinking, like, again, I was probably 3-4 years old, and I was like, I kind of knew that word, but I knew it was wrong. And then and my dad kind of like pulled it out real quick, so I wasn't listening to it. And I'm like, but I heard people laughing at it, and I'm like, and I remember thinking like, is that guy like, he said a bad word, he said something he's not supposed to. Did he mess up? Is something wrong with him? Like, are they laughing at him in public? Like, because I didn't see it, I had no concept of what was going on. But yeah, I just. Like growing up, like I always loved funny things. I was an anxious kid. I was always kind of like a nervous, sort of nerdy kid, and but I was like pretty smart. I loved writing. Like I was pretty good. I could always write stories. I was always really good at that, and I always wanted to be funny. Like that was like kind of my way to relate to people. You know, it's like, oh, I can tell a joke if I'm shy, but I can say something funny. You know, and of course, like once like middle school started and girls became a thing, like. I wasn't a great athlete. I wasn't like I was shy. I was this nerdy kid, but like, oh, I could make girls laugh, and like that was like a huge that was a huge thing. That was it. So I did that, and I was involved in music. Like I sang. I was in like the choir because that's what I did. And then I got into high school, and I started doing theater in high school, and I loved theater. Because you get to be on stage, you're performing. And then it's like I found my people. Like I found all of those friends who were like the music theater department, and like those were my people. And I just realized it was like, oh, there are other funny people who don't always just talk about sports or are making dumb jokes. It's like, oh, smart, interesting people who like the same shows that I do, who like to make jokes. And that's where I found. And then some of my other friends, like that's when I found. Of course, like Saturday Night Live was a big thing, of course, for everybody. Mm-hmm. But like I don't. Are you? I mean, it's kind of a dumb question. Were you a big Saturday Night Live kid?
Not a big Saturday Night Live kid. I was kind of in your realm with MTV Comedy Hour, but instead replaced that with Last Comic Standing. I grew up during the Last Comic Standing first, so that was kind of where I saw it.
Right, and it's like it's that obsessive thing, and I should say, like back in my day, when I was 10 years old or whatever, late 80s, early 90s, it was this comedy boom. So every channel, there was MTV's Half Hour Comedy Hour. There was, Comedy Central started to become a thing. A&E's Comedy Spotlight, Caroline's Comedy Hour, Comedy on the Road. Like you could just flip around, and there was always stand-up comedy on. And like I would see the same acts doing the same jokes on the different, you just memorize them. So, but yeah, like SNL became a thing. Like everybody loved, and like of course, like I'm like middle school or whatever, where it's like, Dana Carvey and Wayne's World and all that, Church Lady and Mike Myers stuff, and like, which is fine, and like I don't have anything against that, but like to me, it was like too big of a thing. Like I wanted it weirder, and like I feel like I knew I wanted something. And again, it's Saturday Night Live, it's Wayne's World. Like, how great is that? But like, I wanted something that wasn't as mainstream. Like, it was like I was like a hipster comedy fan, even as like a middle school. Where it's like our favorite, me and my little tiny group of nerdy friends, like we didn't really talk. Everybody else was talking about Wayne's World, the Church Lady, and then that again, fine. But like, what we were talking about was like Jack Handy's Deep Thoughts.
Oh my gosh!
Like, because it was so weird and so bizarre, and you don't really know who Jack Handy is. You never see him, and it was just so absurd. And like, people would recite, whatever the catchphrase is, unfrozen caveman lawyer or whatever, that everybody loved the characters. But it was like, no, this is something different. And like, we would like write down the deep thoughts, and then we try to write our own deep thoughts, and so that was a huge thing. And then what happened? I think it was right around ninth grade is when Comedy Central really became big. And I hit on, I found two of the craziest, I found The Kids in the Hall and Mystery Science Theater.
Okay.
And like those things, just like, I had never seen anything like that before. Like I was just like, blew my, and it was weird and it was different and it looked like it was filmed in a basement somewhere in the middle of Canada. And like, that's what I love. Like I love that weird, different thing. Like even when, like when I was younger, I'm jumping around here, but like
that's right.
Like Eddie Murphy, Seinfeld, like the big comics with their big specials, Raw, Delirious. Like I was never really into it because it just seemed like it was too mainstream, too big of a thing. Like there's too many people there, and it was like too much of a spectacle. Like that's why I liked MTV's Half Hour Comedy Hour, because it was these weird little, like almost like vaudeville kind of acts where it was like, oh, just me and my nerdy friends know about this. Like everybody's talking about, Eddie Murphy, but it was like, I just wanted to find these little weird, like Dana Gould, who's to this day is probably my favorite comic. Like I remember watching him when I was, 12 probably, and being like, that's the funniest, weirdest thing I've ever seen.
Now your friends, your other friends that you were with were probably like you, like, oh, we like watching the same kind of stuff. We like talking about the next day. We like kind of looking at it. But I'm assuming they all went on to jobs, doing, accounting or nursing or truck driving, whatever. But you're like, no, I actually want to dive deep into what's going on here. Why? What separated you from your friends, kind of thing? As far as like, I'm actually taking this serious. This is not just like, it's entertainment, but I'm taking this seriously too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like, for a while I did it for like so like into high school, like I was still watching a lot of comedy. I was, but I was in the theater. I was doing a lot of theater stuff, and I was like, do I become an actor? Is that something I can be? And then I'm trying to think. Like I got into college, and then it was like, okay, college stuff, and I kind of forgot about like I was always the funny guy. Like I was always like in my fraternity, I was always the guy who could crack a joke, the one-liners. Like everybody knew that. So I always was trying to be the funny guy, because that was the way that I could stand out. Like it was like, okay, Chip, be the funny guy. So, but like I did sort of the straight and narrow stuff. Like I got my degree in psychology. I got my teaching certification. It was like, okay, I'm going to be a teacher, and then probably a principal, and then maybe like a psychologist or something like that. That's kind of what I thought I was going to go into. But I was always just a fan of comedy, because it's like, comedy isn't a career. Like you don't make money doing comedy. It's not like there's not an office where you go to. So it's like, how do you, like, where would you even go to do that? You know what I mean? So it was like, I was always a comedy fan, and then, but I just kind of followed that path. And then actually a buddy of mine who's an actor to this day out in Chicago, my buddy Adrian, he and I worked at a video store a couple of like summers and like Christmas breaks and all in my hometown throughout college. And he was the one, he gave me, he's like, you got to read this. He's like, you're funny. And we both love comedy. We were both into acting and all. And he gave me George Carlin's Brain Droppings book. Okay. Which is like, changed my life. Like it was, if you ever read it, but it's like, you just open it up and like, there might be like a chapter or two, but most of Brain Droppings is kind of like just a paragraph here or there. It's basically like his stand-up comedy jokes, just sort of like thrown together. You can kind of open up to any book and there's like 5 different jokes. Yeah. And I read that thing cover to cover a couple of times, and then started a notebook where I just like started like writing jokes down, writing ideas down. And I was like, there's gotta be something here. And, but like, it was like just some pipe dream. And it was like, well, I'm never going to do this. Like, how does it happen? And then I started teaching for a couple of years, and, I didn't really like, it was fine, but like, it wasn't my thing. I still felt like a kid, and I didn't feel like, being responsible. And that's when my brother was in the band. Yeah. And I was a little musical. Like I can play, like I know chords on the guitar, but like I'm not good. I can sing a little bit, but like they had the band, and I remember like finding that the first time I really saw them play was at Fergie's open mic, actually. Yeah. Monday nights at Fergie's, like upstairs at Fergie's. And like, to this day, I still remember like walking upstairs for the first time at Fergie's and being like, holy shit, like this is great. And there was like singer-songwriters there. There were some bands. There were some like, somebody would recite poetry. And then there was like 1 or 2 guys that did like music comedy. They had like funny songs. And I was like, and I just loved those guys. And they were just like local guys. And I just wanted to be a part of that scene. That's all I wanted. I was like, I just want to contribute to this and like be with those cool kids, in this circle of like 35, 50 people, maybe something like that, of like these cool artists and performers. And I was like, I want to do that. But it's like, how? And then that's my brother and his band all knew. They were like, you're funny, you're always telling jokes. We know you want to do this. And then they're the ones that like push me up on stage. They told me like a week ahead of time, and they're like, you got a week. We know you have jokes written. Prepare yourself. Okay. Yeah.
So I'm trying to maybe get into as far what I can track of what you're telling me so far is there's always been this I need to perform bug, whether it's in a school play, even teaching to a certain extent is a type of performance because you have to keep kids' attention. You're doing all this different. Why not just be the funny guy in the office? Why not just be the funny teacher, the funny priest, the funny guy at the bar? What makes you need to go up on stage and be like, no, these guys are listening to what I'm going to say? Why is it important that you are the center of attention for 15 minutes, an hour, or even 5 minutes?
It's a great question. As much as I like to, and I think this is probably the answer, but it's like, as much as I like to perform, when I was off stage, I was always pretty like shy and quiet. Like my brother was actually the one that like, he was always he's 2-3 years younger than I am. And he was always like very bubbly, Mr. Personality. Everybody loved him. And like, I was more of like the shy kid and like the nervous kid. And I always kind of like held back. And then it's like when I found those moments of like, oh, I can get on stage. It's like, oh, I can get this need that I have for like to have that attention I want, you know. And I think I started to develop it too. Like I was never like the class clown. Like I was a good kid and like a pretty good student. And I always felt bad. Like as shy as I was, like if I had to give a report or like be up on stage, like I loved commanding attention. Like, I loved that. If I had to like be one-on-one with somebody, I'd be a lot more nervous. But like in front of a group, like I was totally fine. So, so I think it was, and I think for a while I kind of resigned myself to be like, well, I'm just going to be the funny guy. I'm going to be the funny teacher or the whatever. And I knew there was something else. Like I was like, I got to do this. Like I saw this for so many years, and I was like, I think I can do this. Actually, one time, and it was like during this time, I was going to a lot of concerts, and like big music fan, and I would go to concerts with my brother and the band. They were actually at this concert, but I went to see Mike Doty, who's the lead singer at Soul Coughing in the '90s. He's got a great solo career, and I love him, one of my favorite artists. And we were at the TLA, and it was just him and a guitar. And I love his music, but like between each song, he would just tell a funny story or just like say something dumb or interact with the crowd. And it was so hilarious. And I was like, oh, like it really like brought back like stand-up comedy. Like I was like, because I was kind of out of it for a while, I guess, you know, and I was like, oh, he's making everybody laugh and like engaging them. I was like, I think I could, like, I have this notebook of these funny things that I want to say. I was like, I got to do this. And then I went, and this is terrible. I hate to bash him, but it was whatever. I went back, I went to Muhlenberg College up in Allentown, and it was a year or two after I graduated. I went back for a night because Jimmy Fallon was coming to perform. Oh, wow. And he was on SNL at the time. Oh, wow. He was kind of like height of Jimmy Fallon. I don't know if he was doing Update at that point or whatever, but it was big. And it was in like the big hall, there's like 1,200 people there or whatever. And I went, with some of my friends, and like people just loved it and went crazy. Like they were just like adore. And like, I really like Jimmy Fallon. I got the meet and greet. Like I even got to meet him afterwards. Okay. And he was like such a nice guy. Yeah. It was very nice. To me at the time, like it wasn't really my thing. And I was like, wait, they think this is funny? Like I think I can be fun. I think I can do this. Like it just didn't hit me that hard. And like, I'm sure it was brilliant or whatever, but like, I was like, I think I could do this. Like, this is what I can do, So and,
I want to go back to something you just said real quick. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just want to go back to something you said real quick. You're at the Jimmy Fallon concert, and you almost remove yourself from just being a spectator, and you're just watching now the people around you, and they're giving him all this love, and that seems to now be more attractive to you versus now he's getting all this love, and you're like, I don't even get why he's getting this, because this is not the funniest. I can be funnier than this if I need to be. And I also want to kind of circle around too a little bit that a lot of these stories you're telling me kind of involve your brother, and you mentioned your brother is more the bubbly personality. Was stand-up comedy the competitive edge you had against your brother, meaning that, hey, I'm funny too. He's sucking up all the attention, but maybe if people knew how funny, and I can get on stage, maybe I can get a little attention my direction. Was that maybe possible, some of it? A competition with your brother?
Consciously it was. subconsciously, probably. I think it was more of, honestly, because he and I, the one nice thing, it's just my brother and I. So
Yeah.
we're the only two siblings. He's 3 years behind me in school. You know, he's like 2.5, 3 years younger than me. And so there was a little bit of a gap. It wasn't so big, but it was 3 years. And we were such different kids growing up. Like we always got along. And I think that was part of it because we were so different that we weren't, like, I don't remember ever really being competitive with him. Like, in sports, we kind of played different sports, and neither of us were huge athletes anyway. He was just like such a naturally gifted musician, like amazing musician. He's always been way smarter than I am, but I was a better student. Like I'm sure there was some ADD and some other things with him where he's a teacher now. He actually runs a planetarium at a school now. I mean, brilliant.
You do a show with him now with that too.
Yeah, it's great. It's so much fun. Yeah, but so we were always so different that there wasn't really a competition.
Not a competition sports-wise, but how about a competition with your parents? Did your parents relate better to your brother because you're more the shy, kind of nerdy, kind of offbeat kind of guy, and your parents related more to him because he was more mainstream normal?
I think, to be honest, they related to me more because I was not that my brother was a bad kid or anything like that, but he was a little more wild, and like I was a good kid. I was always afraid of getting in trouble. I got good grades. I was in, all of the honors classes. I mean, he was too, but like, went to a good college, got on the dean's list, like crossed all the T's, dotted the I's. And my brother was kind of like, he was kind of the wild one, like went to school for a year, but then dropped out and then was like a waiter. And then he was a mechanic. And then he was like this and that and he was in a band. And like, I was like the responsible one. And then, which is kind of funny now because he's the one now who like I'm married, but he's married, got the 2 kids, 2 dogs, big house. He's got the and it's like I've kind of gone the other way. It's like I was always the responsible one, and then we sort of. But like, I think rather than a competition, it was honestly going back to like that Fergie's time and like all those like artists, especially the band, like. I think I just wanted to be in the band. Like I just wanted to be in the band because I wanted to hang out. And like I always did. I was sort of like the roadie, always carrying stuff to gigs and stuff. But like I just wanted to be a part of it. And I wanted to like, I'm sure I was like a little jealous and like felt left out because it was like, he's doing these cool things. And it wasn't like, oh, I want to compete and get better than him. But it was like, I just kind of want to join him and his friends. And like, I want to be a part of that thing and that new world we found of like these cool artists in Philadelphia. And it was like, it's like, I'm not good enough of a musician, but it's like, oh, I could stand out as comedian because like there weren't really comedians in that circle. So it was like, that can be my thing. And then it was like, so then it became a thing where like, okay, he was the musician and I was the comedian and we both kind of had our thing. It was to a certain extent a competition, but like we did shows for a couple of years. They were always fun. They were called Santa's Hangover. We did. It was every year. It was a big annual show. It started out, the first few years was at Fergie's. And then when he got his first house, and I actually lived there, we did it in his basement. And it was always like the weekend it was always like the weekend between Christmas and New Year. So like, because everybody was home, all that. And what we would do, like when it was in his basement, he had a little like, probably 4-inch stage high that could fit the band in his unfinished basement. And we just like put like lights up. We put like 50 folding chairs up, had a keg or 2 in the back. Yeah. And then like what would happen, we had like, like 40 or 50 of our friends come. I was new to comedy, so I would like bring some of my new comedy friends. We would do like maybe an hour comedy show. And then he would do, his band would play that. And that was like the night. And like, those were some of the most fun because it was like, we were all kind of like throwing our thing out there. Like I was doing my comedy, he was doing the music. So like that was, and it was like, we're both sort of on the same playing field. Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, thank you for going into that a little bit because, I also want to then ask, so you're this good kid growing up. You're a good kid, getting good grades. You got into Muhlenberg, which is a very good school, and then you get teaching certification on top of your psychology degree, and then you're like, I know you were teaching and dabbling in comedy at the same time, but I read an interview one time, and someone had asked you, what do your parents think about your stand-up comedy? And you say that they are cautiously supportive. So
Yeah.
was this just I want to maybe have this identity? It's not so squeaky clean, good guy. Even though your comedy is not like Andrew Dice Clay. Being a stand-up comedy, there's this. I mean, even my mom has this like this perception where there's just cocaine everywhere, and there's needles and syringes, and car accidents. It's that kind of thing. Was this maybe you kind of divorcing yourself from this image of I'm not just this goody two shoes, leave it to Beaver kind of guy. I'm a badass comic as well, kind of thing.
Yeah, that was definitely part of it, and like I think it was a thing too, where just I think mentally and I had this, I had a girlfriend for a lot of college, and then another girlfriend in college where it was like, I had most of my college career, I had these like 2 long-term girlfriends. So it was like that thing where like I was definitely gonna be the first one in my group of friends who was gonna get married and have kids, and that was gonna be the thing. And I was the responsible one. And then like, I kind of like, after college, I kind of broke away from that. I was like, wait a minute, no, I grew up too fast. Like I'm not ready for this. And I kind of regressed. At the same time, I'm getting this teaching job where it's like I'm kind of being thrown to like, well, you're in charge of these 4th graders now, and you have to be responsible. But then on nights and weekends, it was like I want nothing to do with being responsible.
Yeah.
Like I just so that was definitely a part of like I got to do this other thing. And like I was definitely like kind of holding on to my youth, and like because I don't want to just be that funny guy at the office, that funny teacher. Like I always, as soon as I started teaching, I had one foot out the door. Like I was always ready to like, this isn't, and like, God, it's such a great profession, and it's like, my heart goes out to all the teachers, but it was like, I knew right away, I was like, I can't do this for my whole career.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. So then you go ahead and you do your brother's band show, and then you immediately enlist in the Northeast Comedy Cabaret comedy class. What, that specific class aside, what is your, and I know you teach comedy classes yourself at Helium. So what is it, do you recommend comedy classes for comics, for all comics starting out, or is it mostly blended to like, hey, are you tailoring it for maybe a certain group of people that maybe need a little extra help? Kind of like what is your, I know you teach, so I know there's like a double-edged sword because you teach also a comedy class as well, but can somebody who is not funny, can they benefit from a comedy class no matter who teaches it or where it's being taught at?
I think it's a really good question. And I think people take comedy classes for different reasons. And like me teaching it the last like 3 years, I've definitely figured that out. And so I like try to focus differently on different people. There are, and the first thing I'll say, I'll answer the first part of the question is like, I don't think everybody has to take a stand-up comedy class, but like, I also don't like people who are like, dude, comedy classes are a waste of money. It's like, I got a lot out of my comedy class. Like I got, not only did I just, because after I did my brother's show, it was for about a year. Over that year, I did like 3 or 4 open mics. Like I do an open mic, get scared, and I wasn't progressing. And then I saw this class, because I was scared, it's, as you know how it is when you first start. You go up, you barely get any laughs, and then you hide for 3 months, and then you go back up. And I was like, I saw this class, and I was like, okay, this will force me to go, and it's a safe environment. And I'm a good student, so it's like, I like the classroom feel. So it's like, I can do this. And so it gave me not only like helpful hints of like structure of comedy, joke writing, business tips of it. It was just that, that's the confidence of like, okay, I can get up in front of this small group of people who are all in the same boat and try these jokes. And Joey Callahan was a teacher, local comic, love Joey. And he was the one who told us, he's like, the class is from 6 to 8 on Wednesdays for 6 weeks in a row. And then at 8:30 every Wednesday is the open mic. And he's like, the people who stick around and do the mic, they're always the ones that get good. Yeah. So, and like, luckily I had a little bit of background. Like I had been on stage a few times. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And not just the class, but it forced me to go to that open mic. At the end of that 6 weeks, it was all over. It was like, I knew everybody. I knew I was confident. Like, I just like, there was no turning back. Like I was just, this is it. Yeah. So but then going back to like, can you make anybody funny? Or it's like, if you're not funny, like there's definitely something in your DNA or upbringing that makes us funny or doesn't make us funny. So you have it or you don't to a certain extent. There's definitely levels of that. And, I try to pull that out of people and like, okay, here it is. And like, I'm not going to be the type of person to be like, you're never going to make it. You're not funny. I'm not going to crush somebody's dreams. But, a lot of people, I'd say 99% of, not 99, a good amount of people, they take the class because it's a bucket list thing. Yeah. And they're big comedy fans. So it's like, okay, let's learn how to do this. It's fantasy camp to a certain extent. Do it for a couple weeks. You get up on stage for the big graduation show. You did it. And it was like, wow, I just did it. And that felt great. And now I'm going to go back to my job, my life. Yeah. And I'm fine. Yeah. And some people, that's what they want. And that's great. Or, some people, they're, a business person, they're a lawyer or whatever, and they want to get better public speaking skills. So they take it for that, so it's like, I can, so people take that but then there are a lot of people who legitimately want to pursue stand-up. So they started, I just try to make it as inclusive as possible. Be like, look, and I never try to put out any, false hope or like, like I can't guarantee to make anybody funny. I don't have that. Nobody can do that. But I was like, I can share my experience with you. I can give you exercise that work for me, styles that work for me, a safe environment to like practice this stuff, and then you take it from there, after the 6 weeks or whatever, take it from there. So, so there's definitely some people that have it, some people that don't. Yeah. But,
I want to dispel this stigma because I do think that comedy classes do help. And I feel like, now that I've been doing comedy for too long now, I could probably definitely benefit from doing a comedy class, but now I'm like, it's been in for 5 years, kind of thing. Do I want to get back in with people who've never done it? But I also I think the stigma out there is, I don't want to think that people got funny from a comedy class, but I also want people to know that like, there's just techniques that a comedy class can give you. For instance, I ran the light at Helium at an open mic, and no one ever, it was something that I've never, and guess what? I haven't been back on Helium open mic since then. And had I been on, had I maybe been in that class, that would have been something said. I know you have put me to the side and told me, if the people are talking, lower your microphone, get as soft as possible. I mean, maybe if you could talk a little bit more about like, hey, the comedy class isn't just about trying to make you funny. It's also like, how can I set you up for success once you pull that mic out of its holster kind of thing. Just the technique side of it.
When I take a lot of what I learned from Callahan in my class, or at least the way he approached it and I'm paraphrasing, but basically what he said, he's like, I can teach you in 6 weeks of class what it would take you 6 months to a year of going to an open mic and learning, and not only is it like the right things to do, but I'm going to teach you the wrong things to avoid. Again, look, my biggest thing is like, don't run the light, because that's probably the most common mistake that new comics like, we don't know. You don't know when you first start out. You run the light. Oh, well, I just went over 2 minutes. Not a big deal. Well, it's like, yeah, it is a big deal. Yeah. But to a civilian, they don't know that. So it's like, to give them little tricks and pitfalls of like, don't get drunk before you go on stage the first time. Or like, again, it's like, even, people make fun of like, oh, it's like teaching people to hold the mic. It's like, well, yeah, teach people to hold the mic the right way so people can hear you and you don't leave the mic stand in front of you. And, and just the way you approach even just professionalism and like just the way you approach writing a joke, getting on stage, like finding your light, make sure the light is, make sure the light is on you so your face isn't in the dark, it's like, it's just like things like that, or like, okay, let's slow your pace, or like, let's not give away the punchline. And it's like, if you have a semblance, and I think a lot of people, like most people show up, I always say for the first day, it's like, you don't have to have anything written, you don't have to have anything prepared. Yeah. A lot of people do, because like me, they have this secret notebook that they've been writing little funny ideas for years, not knowing what to do with it. So it's like, okay, let's take that and let's put it up on its feet, see what it does. And like, let's put it in this framework of like, this is how a comedy set works. Okay, this is how a joke is formed. Let's go from there. So it's like, I think it's like coaching to a certain extent. And again, like, I'm not gonna, claim to make anybody. And there's some people who just come into the class hilarious and they got it. You know, it's like, well, I'm not going to stand in your way to a certain extent. But then, but you can sort of help people and just kind of help form them and be like, okay, try this, try that. And, and then after 6 weeks, it's like, all right, now it's your time to go try it out.
Yeah.
Hopefully now you have that background of like, you're not going to make those 5 big mistakes that people make. That I made my first time. It's like, let's avoid those things. Try to do the right things. So now, hopefully, you have a leg up on people. Like, there were definitely comedy classes around, especially back in the day, where like, it was like people are like, oh, it's a waste of money, or they're stealing your money, or like, people think just because they took the class, they can get booked at that club, so they think they're getting stage time. So it's like they're paying their way in where all of us are paying our dues. And like, that's one of the things that I always say right away in class. It's like, look, this is not, it's like, there's no favoritism. There's no like, we're offering this class, you pay for it. I'm going to give you this class. I'm going to be as good as you can, but it's not going to be, it's not going to be that same thing. Yeah.
Okay. It's not a fast pass to the club. No, could you imagine it was?
Right. Yeah.
So let's go into the meat of what this is about. And this is just how you develop a joke, how it goes from a little bean in your head to paper or a computer or your phone, whatever avenue, we'll talk about that, to the stage, to your editing process, to back into finally hits, in your case, 2 different albums, which we'll talk about at the very end. But you sent me 2 different jokes. When you emailed me and you said, I don't really write down my jokes probably the way you think or kind of thing, I was almost floored because the way your jokes come out is it seems like that you analyze every word that comes out of your mouth, that these jokes are well thought out. They've been edited a billion times down, cut and pasted in different parts. And so now that this image has been shattered and you give me a little bit of a pulling back the curtain kind of into your thing, let's talk about the 2 jokes you sent. And so the first one we're talking about is your joke about Chuck E. Cheese.
I will tell you this about myself. I'm terrible with money. I wish I had more money. I was rich. I'm just not, because I don't understand how money or business or economics work. I just don't get it. I don't understand it. And just as a little illustration as to how I don't understand money, I'll tell you this story. I have a nephew. He's 5 years old. And when he turned 5 years old for his birthday, my brother and sister-in-law took him to Chuck E. Cheese for the party. The Chuck E. Cheese party, like they play skee ball, they eat pizza, the mouse comes out, one of the kids throws up, and then they go home. So since my nephew, since it was his 5th birthday, he's the birthday boy, they put him in the cash grab machine. You guys are aware of the cash grab machine? You know that? It looks like an old phone booth. It's like glass, and he goes in, and there's these dollar bills, and they put these fans on. These dollar bills flap around. They're like Chuck E. Cheese dollars. He's got 30 seconds to grab as many Chuck E. Cheese dollars as he can. But he's 5. He's this innocent little child. And what do they do to him? Right in the middle of the Chuck E. Cheese, they slap these safety goggles on him. They throw him in this box. They slam the door shut. And then these loud fans come on underneath him as everyone he has ever met stands around the box and cheers. And he's in there with all these dollar bills, and it's loud, and he's trying to grab them. He didn't try to grab them. He just stood there, horrified, and bawled his eyes out. And right there, that's my basic understanding of how the economy works. Like there's money around me. I know I'm supposed to get it. People want me to have it, but I don't know how. And I just get sad and I cry a lot.
Which will drop in here. And if you can kind of just walk me through, where did this joke come from? Where did you get? Because the ending is brilliant. The ending is, with any good joke, no one sees the ending coming, and this is the prototype to that formula. Right. So how did that joke even come in that, hey, this is something that's funny? Were you actually at Chuck E. Cheese watching this happen?
It was my nephew's 5th birthday.
Okay.
And he's 12 now, I guess. So yeah, let's go back. Yeah. It was his 5th birthday, and we're at Chuck E. Cheese, and doing the thing, being the good uncle, and and I still remember, and he and to a certain extent, he reminds me of me. He was this nervous kid or whatever. Again, he's 5, and at most 5 years old, they put him in that cash grab machine, and like I saw him do it, and it's like he had the goggles on and everything, and then like all these dollar bills, and it's like, all right, go, and everybody's like screaming, and like he just starts bawling his eyes out and crying, and they like have to pull him out, and I was like, okay, that's hilarious right there. And then it's like, where do you go from that? And it's like, and to be honest, I wish I had a better story for you. It's like I think I sat on that image for a while. I was just like, there's got to be something with that. And then, you know, sometimes I remember I took I've done some sketch and a little bit of improv, but it was through Philly Improv Theater a couple of years ago. I took a improv to sketch class. It was like a weekend seminar with Kevin McDonald from the Kids in the Hall.
Oh yeah.
Like, the one thing that he had said was that when the Kids in the Hall would like write a sketch or like pitch a sketch or whatever it was, their big question was always, what's the about?
Okay.
You know, okay, so this is about this. What's the sketch about? Well, the sketch is about a parent going into a parent-teacher conference at his kids' class. That's what it's about. He's like, okay, well, what's the about? What's it really about? Well, it's about, you know, class struggle, or about this guy's alcoholism that he doesn't know about, or about, or, you know, some sort of like, you know, sexual undertone where the guy's attracted to the teacher, or like, you know, is it there's some sort of commentary. So it's like, we always took a step back. He's like, what's it really? What's the about? So I try to think about that, like, especially if it's like more of a story joke that I tell. It's like, okay, how can I put a bow on this? And like, what can I relate? Because, you know, again, comedy is all about similes and metaphors, all about comparisons. So it's like, what can I compare this thing to? You know, and it's like, so my nephew was really scared of being in this cash machine, you know, with money floating around. It's like, what can I compare that to? And it's like, oh, well, I'm not good. He's not good with money. I'm not good with money. You know, it's like, I'm not, you know, it's like, I don't have a lot of money, you know? So it's like, oh, there's my hook. I can parallel that to me. Okay. And then it's like, okay, so what's this about? This is about, it kind of runs in the family, or it's like, that's my basic, like, I don't understand economics. That's what I saw there. That's my, like, in my head, in my mind, with like my anxiety and my stuff like that, it's like, I don't know what I'm doing with like investments or with whatever, blah, blah, blah. That's what he's doing overtly with this physical, this visual thing we can see. That's what's going on in my mind. So it's like, okay, that's my basic understanding of
but you also didn't get the economics thing the day you're watching your nephew, and then the part of you didn't happen the same day. You had to wait until kind of Kevin McDonald kind of geared you in that direction. But walk me through you're watching
exactly the timeline. But I think honestly, like, that joke might have come a few years later. Like it just sat there in a notebook for a while, and I didn't know what to do with it. And then somehow
you just said notebook. So when you're with your nephew, did you have a notebook on you? Were everyone else like appalled and like crying because and you're laughing hysterically and be like, did you whip out a notebook right there and just put like, my nephew's crying in a cash cage, this is something I can work with, and you throw it back in your pocket?
Well, do you know the it's I think it's on I want to say it's my last story, my second to last. I think it's my second to last story on my first album. The one about my grandmother's funeral.
Yes.
About the lady coming in and gone. That stuff. That was at her viewing. Yeah. Okay. Then we sat down right after the viewing. Sat down to go to sat down in the pews for the actual funeral service. I pulled out one of those little communion cards. You know, those little like. Or the communion, whatever they are, the little communion cards, they look like little business cards. And with the little golf pencil in the pew, I was writing that down during my grandmother's funeral. I was like, lady thought that other grandmother's my grandmother. I put it in my pocket. I was like, I'm not forgetting this. I mean, that happened. So Chuck E. Cheese was a lot easier. So this is what I do. I use some visual aids. I brought some visual aids. I always carry around the moleskin notebook. It's always in my back pocket. I always have a pen. So it's like whenever I think about something, it's like I just jot down the idea. And like when I teach in class, I always call it my seed because like it's the idea of a joke. It's a seed of a joke. It's not necessarily, you know, every once in a while we're blessed with like a joke and a punchline just lands in our lap and it's like, boom, it's done. Yeah. But it's like, at the very least, I'm documenting it and it's like, here's the idea. It's going to sit in this notebook, probably honestly for a couple of weeks, couple of months even.
Yeah.
And then I'll go back at it with fresh eyes and be like, okay, what's the about her? Like what, what can you do? My bikini wax joke.
Yes, which is probably my favorite joke you do. That's my favorite one because I am just a fan of observational comedy, and that's something that's even like at a level. Like when you think of observational, think of Jerry Seinfeld. I feel like that's even a level before, like above what Seinfeld could do. Just the and up. I mean, like I don't think I think only you could have found that joke, and no one else, kind of thing. So
and it is funny. Speaking of my nephew, I still remember this day. My nephew was like 2 or 3 years old.
Mm-hmm.
My brother brought him down to the city for the day, and we were just like, I lived down in the city, they live out in the suburbs, and like we were just walking around town, and I walked past this nail salon. And it was like, it's like, and it just had that menu, and it was like, bikini wax, $25 and up, and I just saw it, and I was like, wait, what does? And probably my brother and I, because my brother's a really funny guy too, so we were probably joking about it. I was like, that's right, and I was like, $25 and up, like, what does that look like? You know? And then I brought in the mechanic thing too, like I forget exactly. It's like if it was like, it's like, I guess it's like the. And again, by the way, it's been so long since I've done this joke and even done comedy that I forget exactly. But it's like, like how do you haggle for it? Like that's just such a weird. You get an estimate, and so, but it was just writing that down, And it's and that's one thing that like when I teach my class, like I try to think about. And by the way, me teaching the class really has helped my stand up because it's like you really slow things down and you get back to the rudiments of like. Oh, this is how you do stand up. And it's like, okay, so it's like, if I teach it to somebody, it's like, I think about it myself and it's kind of going slow motion. The one thing that I learned, I'm sorry, I'm kind of jumping over.
No, that's all right. That's okay.
But like the one thing that I learned that I realized is like, people, the big question that you probably get too, it's like, how do you write your jokes? How do you write comedy? And honestly, like, I never had a good answer. Like, I didn't know, it's like, and I was like, if I'm teaching this, I should know, and then I found it's kind of a deflection and it's kind of a easy way out, but I think it's the right answer. And it's always helped me. It's like, I never think of it as writing comedy ever. It's not writing comedy. It's finding comedy. I'm trying to find comedy in the world. So it's like, I'm keeping my eyes open and ears open all the time. And you know how it is too. You've been doing this for a while and you're just so funny. And like, you've developed that and gotten better of like, you see things and you hear things on the street, you on TV and in a conversation with someone, whatever it is. You walk past the nail salon, you see a sign. Yeah. As comedians, we're observers and we learn how to filter those things and like have that angle and that eye of like, okay, I see this sign at the nail salon. Okay, like we kind of hit at all angles then, and we're like, okay, that's funny. What's funny about it? I'm gonna jot it down, and whether it's right in the moment or, I mean, you have to be in the moment to find it. Yeah. But like in the moment or thereafter when you start writing it, it's like, okay, this bikini wax, this sign. What's funny about it? How can I convey it to an audience? And what's there? Like I saw it. There's something weird here. So what is what can make it funny? And like I think we also learn how to be like, oh, I see this thing, but that seems too obvious. That's not funny. So it's like you learn how to be like, well, that's not funny, but this is funny. Or like I hear somebody say something a certain way, so that I just jot it down. It's like a waiter says something, or whatever. Yeah.
So would you say that you're never present? You're always finding, as you say, finding comedy, whether it's at your own grandmother's funeral, maybe a tense argument with your wife, maybe your dad calls you about maybe a drastic situation. Your brain never shuts off and addresses the present situation. You always might be like, okay, hold up over here. I'm seeing this thing over here. I just need to open my notebook. That's kind of what you are. There's never an off switch for Chip Chantry.
To a certain extent, and like honestly, like the last few months, which obviously with everything going on, like I'm getting that switch is definitely on a lot more when I'm doing a lot more shows. Yeah. So like, let's say I have a week at Helium, or I'm on the road somewhere, at the Punchline, or whatever, San Francisco, something, and I'm doing 7 shows in a week, that switch is always on, because it's like, oh, I got a show tonight. Is there something funny I can see here that I can do tonight? Because I'm just in that mindset. But yeah, like a lot of times, like I'm definitely looking for the joke.
Okay.
You know, one of my favorite things to do is write topical jokes, like monologue jokes, topical jokes, and like Twitter and stuff. And like, so I can't not look at an article, like a CNN article or something like that. And it's like, what's the joke here? What can I tweet about that? Like, what's the angle? You know, so to that extent, like definitely it's like, I think as comedians, it's like we just have that, we are a part of the human race, but we're also sort of outsiders observing what's going on and being like, that's funny, that's weird, I like that, that's different, I want to talk about that.
Okay. So let's talk generally about just your writing routine, because you're telling me nuggets of it, but I want to kind of piece it together as a part of the timeline. But so I really want to find out, how does Chip Chantry come up with all these jokes? Because I mean, if you look at both albums, we're talking close to 50 different jokes that you do between the two, and that's not to mention just the other jokes that didn't make the album that are just good, but not didn't make the album for whatever reason. So you mentioned you see something funny, you always carry that notebook around, or if you don't have a notebook, you're picking something out like a viewing card or like a prayer card at a. So everything is always, even at your nephew's Chuck E. Cheese thing, everything is always written down right away, correct? Or is the image mostly like something with your nephew is like, that image will never leave my head, and I'm just gonna like carry it until I can write it down?
I always write it down just because I'll forget it. Because it's like, and you know that feeling, and I remember like when I was starting comedy, or even before that when I was writing, it's like I saw something funny at 10 o'clock in the morning, and I was like, oh, I'll get home and I'll write it down because it's a funny thing, and I had this really good joke idea, or whether I saw it or even just something occurred to me, you know, I was like, oh, I'll write that down. And then it's like I'm so angry at myself because like I knew I had something brilliant. I have no idea what it was.
Okay.
You know? And so I learned that I was like, I gotta jot it down just to jog the memory. Yeah. You know, if it's not fully formed, it's just the idea.
The seed, what you call the seed. Now, how many of these different notebooks do you have? That thin notebook, how many would you say exist in the Chantry household?
I mean, I've been doing it for the notebook thing for at least probably 10 years or so. It's like, so, you know, probably a couple of dozen of these.
Okay.
You know?
Now,
those and then I have like these, you know, spiral notebooks.
Yes.
Of, you know, a stack this big, and those are honestly, because like I said, I don't really write out my jokes like as much. And like, by the way, I'm sure I can be much better at it if I did write it out, like really parse it out word for word. But like really, like most of my notebooks are just like set lists. Like what I always do, and I guess I don't want to get too far ahead, but like the night of a show, like that afternoon or that evening, what I do is I sit down and I usually have like two notebooks, right? I have like a notebook and it has like just a list of all of my jokes, like bullet points. And I think I sent you that, like my set card.
Yes.
So it's just a list of like the names of all the jokes, or like, you know, 1 or 2 words that and then what I do is I just, every night of a show, I write out in my notebook my set list. And then I'll also include things like if I have a new joke, or like I'll use that time, that hour or so to like, I'll go into this notebook and then pull out an idea and be like, oh, you know what? Okay, here's a funny idea that I haven't tried yet. I'm doing a 45-minute set. Let me sit for 15 minutes as I'm putting my set together, and then be like, okay, I think I want to tell this story, or try this on stage, and then try this joke. So I'll put that in there, and then I try to flesh that out because I'm not the most disciplined person, and I definitely thrive on deadlines. So it's like, if it's like, oh, something's due in a week, it's like, I'm not going to do it. But it's like, if there's a show tonight, I'll sit there 3 hours and do it that day.
Okay. So to get from the Moleskine notebook to your, when you're trying it out. So this is a brand new joke. So this is you're walking past the Brazilian wax place, you write Brazilian wax, end up in your notebook. All right, so is there anything that you do between you writing it down there and you telling on stage for the first time? Do you write it like, do you use like bullet points, some different punchlines? Do you do anything else? Or is it like, I'm just going to go with this idea and work it out on stage and see how that goes?
Sometimes what I'll do is I'll like bullet point it and like write down, I'll think it out and excuse me, I'm I just
That's okay. Sorry.
But like I'll write it down, and then but like not word for word, but like I'll put bullet points of like I have this idea for a line, I have this idea for a line, I have this idea for a line, and then I kind of work it out that way. And really, what I do is instead of writing it out, I talk it out.
Okay.
So like if I go out for a walk, if I'm in the car, if I'm in the shower, like my wife knows when I'm working on a new joke because like I don't sing in the shower. I do stand up in the shower. Like, I talk the joke out in the shower.
Yeah.
And then like when I'm done, like I come out and then I kind of bullet point it all and it's like, okay, I think I got it. You know?
Okay.
And then I try it on stage. And then I'm not as great as like, listening to my sets and like, okay, let's edit out. Some people are so good at tinkering and like edit out this line, but put this in. It's kind of more of a like, I think before all of this, I just tried to be on stage as much as possible. That it was like, I almost didn't need to rewrite because it was like, okay, so I did this early show. Let me just, that line didn't really work. So let me just drop that line and then streamline it here. Like, hey, this line really seemed to go well. Can I say something more about that? So I'll just try it there. And then it's just like, I'm always up on stage. So like each night, if I'm doing it every night, like I'm just always making my set list. And during that set list time is when I'm like, bullet point, okay, that was good, that was good. They didn't like that line, so I'll take that out. And, so I do it that way. And then it's just that feel of on stage of, like, I tend to be a guy who, like, I think of myself as somebody who likes to be prepared and writes things ahead of time. But, like, I think I definitely do write it on stage. And it does, over the course of, 100 shows, a joke becomes streamlined, it becomes worn down, it gets a couple things are added to it because I find a tagline for it, and I just got that tagline down. So it's not a thing where I'm not somebody who writes it out verbatim in a notebook. It's those ideas bullet pointed that I did.
So if the first stage is the moleskin notebook, the second stage is the spiral notebook, and that's the one that sits in your bedroom when you're out of the shower. You go down, you do the bullet points. Do you take it with you to an open mic or a show? And if you say something, you're like, I gotta go to this notebook and write this line in real quick?
Exactly. And so what I'll do is with my notebook, I'll write a set list. But it'll be like, instead of, and I showed you that little four card. Oh, by the way, I have 2 shoe boxes full of just like lined up, thousands. Because I write one for every set that I do, whether I use it or not. I always have one, and I always write it because it's always a little bit different. And but for open mics, I usually write my set list like on a spiral notebook, and I, instead of just the names of bullet points, like it a little more in depth where I can look down, and instead of like bikini wax, maybe when I first wrote that, it's like nail salon, sign, facial, I even forget the joke now, facial wax, underarm, bikini wax. And then I might write like mechanic, it's like mechanic, and then, parts and labor, something like that. So I have the joke a little bit more fleshed out. So it'll take this long on a page rather than just like bikini wax. It'll be bit. And then that's when I'll sit down after. And I always do this, and I always sit down, especially over mics, I'll sit down and I'll circle, because it's all bullet pointed. So I circle the ones, and this isn't a great scientific thing, but like, I'll circle the ones that really, like, I go right back, like, I'll just sit right back, if it's at Helium. Sit right down in the green room. And I just like, I'll really circle the ones that like, boy, this got a big laugh. Or like, I'll kind of give a little circle if it didn't, or like this one, it'll just be like, oh, it didn't get a laugh. And then I put a line through any jokes or lines that I didn't do and I didn't get to. So then I really focus, I hone in a little bit more on those, like the big ones. And, and those are the ones that then, okay, if it was 8 lines, can I boil it down to 4 lines? And what are the funniest 4 lines? Unless it's a real important part of the exposition of the joke. Let's cut the fat and get to the ones that, time after time really get those big laughs.
Okay, so first stage, moleskin notebook. Second stage, spiral notebook with bullet points. Third stage is this set list card that you have, which I'm going to show. This is where we'll show the set list card. And that is just maybe the title of the joke, and maybe just a note for you to remember something. Maybe it's like part of maybe it's like a newer punchline. It's like maybe a one-word thing. Now I notice that you do it in blocks, and those block. I sit there and stare at that set list like there's like it's like the Unabombers, and trying to figure out like if the boxes are short, like why some are like are they based on time, like the shorter the box, shorter the time, or like why the boxes are not evenly spaced. I'm trying to figure it out. Tell me why the boxes are not an even OCD grid.
Right. It's crazy. So it's three. Usually it's three columns, right? So what I'll do is, and it's my thing. I'll have, it starts here, goes down the first column, then the second columm, and then the third column, and then if it's a longer set, I'll have the back, and then 2 columns on the back.
Yeah.
That's what I usually do. So, and I just go around, and really, the size of it doesn't really matter, but it's like, okay, like if I had, for example, bikini wax on this set list, which I don't, because it's an older joke.
Yeah.
It would literally just say bikini wax. That's all I need to know. I've done it 1,000 times. I know exactly what it is. But if it's another joke, and a lot of these, because this is for my album, so like I had practiced a lot of these, but I'm trying to look to see what's one that takes a little bit more like.
I think you had the Radio Shack joke had like an extra note tapped on top. It said more. Yeah.
Yeah, like Radio Shack, and then like Mixed Liberal Arts. My husband's a cop, so that's kind of about me. Like, it's a part of a bigger story. So like, I wanted to make sure I had each and every one of those lines. But like, at some point, I might have just been able to write Radio Shack, and then it's I know that whole bit. Yeah. But like, some of these are just to like jog the memory a little bit more. Like, I'm trying to think of like.
Well, so your set list card, you take. I've done shows with you. I know it's up on that stool with you, but is that set list card like something that you actually need? Like, I actually need to look down and refer to it, or is it more like a security blanket? Like, I may never look at this set list thing, but I just know it's there, and that's all I need. That's all I need to make sure I can do this flawlessly tonight. It's definitely a security blanket. Yeah. And here's the crazy part. I don't know why. I've been doing comedy for 15 years. In those 15 years, mostly because I've had the card, but like I've almost never blanked on stage ever. But it's like a fear of like, well, what if I forget and I got to do my time, So it's like I always have that. Whenever I don't use the card, I always feel like I do better because I'm just a little more free. And like, what's the worst thing that happens? Because your mind works so fast on stage. So you're like, what's the worst thing that can happen? I go up there, I do a joke, and then I forget the next joke. I just take a drink of water. Yeah. But and then by that time, I've thought of a different joke, whether it's the next joke in order or whatever. Yeah. So I actually work better with it, but it's definitely just a security blanket. I can just look down, and it's there. Okay. Yeah. All right. So Chip Chantry has 3 stages of how he develops a joke. There's the seed, which is the small that is whenever that joke in that notebook, you might as well timestamp it to when he actually sat there and saw whatever he saw to make that a joke. The second stage is it's like a reporter, like a reporter with their little notebook. Like, I'm just who, what, when, and where, just real quick. And like every once in a while, you know how it is. Sometimes we're very lucky and there is a punchline in there, or we think of a punchline right away. But most of the time, it's just here's an idea, here's something I saw. Half the stuff, more than half the stuff, if I even do it once, I probably do it once on stage. It's like, well, it's not worth it. But it's like that's what all mining is. It's like. It's mining for gold. You pan for gold, you're gonna find a lot of rocks, but every once in a while you're gonna find that little chunk of gold. Yeah. Okay. And then the second stage is the spiral notebook. That's where you kind of develop a little bit. Again, you don't do a word for word write out. You do just bullet points, and your editing process is either circling them or crossing them out, and then maybe you sit down before a show and then re-edit it. Talking it out too. I talk it out a lot too. Yeah. It's definitely talking it out. I do the joke in my head 1,000 times. And then the third and final stage is your set list. And that's how we know the joke is done. When it's just 2 words on a note card, that's you might as well have just Chip, sign at the very bottom, and that's him signing off on that joke. Okay. And every once in a while there will be, as you know, like, every once in a while I have a joke and then I say something, gets a big laugh or whatever, and then I just think of a tagline. And a tagline will add stuff to it. Yeah. And sometimes too, it's the other way too, where it's like I have a joke and it goes all right. But like, I realized that like, actually,
the first half of the joke is great. The second half is a little sluggish, or vice versa. So like after a while, it's like, oh, you know what I realized? That's not gonna be a 90-second bit. It's gonna be a one-liner now.
Yeah, and then there's now like a sub process that you do, and that is social media.
There's a what?
A sub process. So that I feel like that's social media. That's Twitter. I saw an interview where you specifically said that I use Twitter to see how many times somebody likes it and retweets it, and then there could be a joke there. That bypass your notebooks then? So a Twitter joke may not be in any of your notebooks. That just might make it right to the set list based on crowdsourcing approval.
It's very true. And that's something I actually forgot to tell you. One of the first things I do, my Twitter account to a certain, not right now because we're not doing stand, but to a certain extent, that's one of the things I always do. Is I usually, and if you want to picture it, very sexy scene. The afternoon of a show or whatever, what I would do is I'll like lay down on my bed, right? And I just like lay down. I bring my laptop and I bring my notebook that I'm writing on. I bring my other notebook that has like my list of jokes. And it's probably like, I usually have 2 notebooks where I go back and forth just so I can like look at last night's set and that notebook. So then I just write it in and just list it for that night. And so I just have this list of all my jokes. But then I have my laptop, and the first thing I do is open up to Twitter, and I just look at my feed from like the last 2 weeks, and I just scroll through, and I'm like, is there anything that like got a lot of hits, or just something that I really like that I think could work?
Yeah.
And that's the first place I go to, and then I write down maybe like I might pick like 4 or 5 of those jokes, the Twitter jokes from like the last week. Okay, I like those, and I put those kind of in the running.
Yeah.
So I usually have 2 pages of, let's see if I can find an example here. 2 pages of notes when I'm doing my, like this one here. This is one of the last jokes I did where like the first side, I write down, these are all the jokes that I think I want to do. They're all in the running. So like, that's, and you notice they're all crossed out.
Yeah.
So like I just make 3 columns. These are just all the jokes that it's kind of my wish list.
Why columns and why sectioned like that? Why? What's the reasoning behind the columns?
Just to save room, and I think I'm kind of a visual person, so it's like okay, I can make a list. It's just like as I think of them. There's no like first columns. It's just like okay, I fill up this column, then I go to the second one, and then I go to the third one. It's not like there's like 3 tiers or anything.
Yeah.
So here's where I'll make bullet points of like. Jokes from my Moleskine, jokes from Twitter, I'll write those, and then jokes from my regular set list that I've been doing for the past few weeks.
Okay.
And then this is my wish list of like, here are all the jokes that I think I might want to do tonight.
Yeah.
Okay. Then then what I do is I take that and then I just restructure them into my actual set list of like, because this is just of like jokes as they occur to me, or like, here are a couple of my Twitter jokes. Here's some things I'm trying out. And then here's just 2 jokes that I think I want to do.
Okay.
And then let's take these. And now I'm going to put them in the right order. Like, okay, I want to start with this joke. So I put it over here. Then this joke's going to be number 2. And then I just cross these out.
Oh, okay.
As I go.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, it's like the first joke I had.
It's like March Madness of your own jokes.
Right. Yeah. It really is. So it's like, like the first joke on here is McDonald's, which was my opener for a while. So it was like, that's there. But then it was like bathroom drunk. So I know I want to do bathroom drunk, but that's going to go because I was excited about that joke. So I wrote bathroom drunk down, but that doesn't come down to like halfway through my set. So it's like, but it's just there. So then I go to my other stuff to see what works out, logistically, what makes sense, what flows best.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And then going back then to the Chuck E. Cheese joke. So that joke kind of circumvents stage 2. You're at Chuck E. Cheese. You see your nephew having a breakdown in the cage. And you maybe write down the Moleskine that day, or maybe wait, because you said the image was in your head, so who knows, wrote down the next day. It doesn't go into the thing, but it's almost that you take the Philly improv class, and that unlocks the funny. That maybe you were trying something and you couldn't find it, and then it was Kevin McDonald that actually got you to the finish line. Not with your punchline, but he unlocked whatever mechanism in your head that you needed to get to the finish line there.
Yeah, and I forget the exact timeline of that.
Yeah.
But just that idea of that, where like I will have jokes that sit for a while. It's like there's something there, but I don't know what it is. I'm gonna wait, and then it just sits there for 6 months, and it's like, and then another situation maybe that's similar to it, or like I just rework it. Like,
so the other clip you sent me about taking your dog to the vet, did that follow more the formula that we have discussed with the small notebook, the spiral notebook, and the set list, or did that also circumvent the usual process as well? Were you at
that one?
Is that a real story, or is that just something that you saw somewhere?
100% real.
Okay.
And 100% real. And that was one of those ones that like, it was, and again, that was like one of my like strongest bits that people liked, that people remembered. And it was one of those ones that sometimes is like, the less you work on it, the better it is.
Yeah.
So like, that's one of those landed in my lap bits where it was just like, basically I just described what happened. And it wasn't like he didn't like wing it at the dog's face, but it was like, he just did this thing where he kind of threw them towards it, and the dog kind of looked, and then it was like, wait, that's it? Like, we're paying for this? There's not a thing? And like, that was funny. And then it's like,
and were you writing this down? Like, once you left the office, did you like sit in the waiting room and write down that, hey, this is something that's a fucked up situation I just witnessed?
If I remember, like, I probably, like, we got home and then I just jotted it down right away of like, oh, okay, that's funny. And then, like I extrapolated out a little bit about like, okay, like we're paying that, like that's all it was. Because really, I'm just the big meat of the joke is me just describing what happened. But again, slowing it down and revealing it. You know? And then,
you talk about being a dog. I was like, you talk about being a dog optometrist. I'm trying to. I guess I want to see how it is, and like when you're physically, you're in the shower and you're right before showtime. Your jokes, you analyze, even though you're not writing it down word for word, each joke is being hit from every imaginable angle. There's not one angle being left out. Can you kind of, with this specific joke with the dog, can you kind of walk me like how you were hitting it all the different, like how did you get to, like I want to be a dog optometrist and bill, rich people out of their money. Like how are you hitting jokes with all these different angles? Like, are you sitting at a desk when you do it? Are you just like, do you run it by Kim, your wife, and be like, hey, am I missing? I'm going to tell you what I have. Am I missing something you're thinking of? You get your brother on the phone and see what he thinks. Like, kind of walk me how you take a joke about, I mean, it is funny. The premise itself is funny. A grown adult male who went to vet school is throwing cotton balls at a dog, thinking if he see or not. But then you take it, that could have been funny just let alone. That could have been an easy 30-second joke and you could have moved on. But you made it a few-minute joke, 3-minute joke or whatever, because you sat there and you analyzed the shit out of it, which is what separates you as a great comedian, is what I feel like. Can you give me the hacks and whatever it is that you do, that how you analyze things, different angles? What are you doing to get to all those angles?
Again, it's just, and like sometimes I will do like a little bit of a like a web sometimes every once in a while. Like I might write that in the middle and then just like a couple of spokes out. And again, there might be 8 spokes out. I'll pick the top 4.
Okay.
Or even bullet points. Even if I bullet point of like, here's an idea I have. It's like, I want to become a dog optometrist, because it's like, the idea for me was like, if he can do it, I can do it. So like, I can do that. That's not too hard. I can make I can become a millionaire doing this, right? So there was that angle, and then there was the angle of like, I'm never going to the eye doctor again. It's a waste of money. Just have a friend of mine whip a kickball at me. So I'm sure, and I can't remember exactly. It was a couple years, but like I'm sure I had a couple other ideas. But like what I'll do is like I might write like 4 or 5 of those ideas, and again I try to hit it at every angle. And one of the things too is, and I mean, this is kind of a common idea in comedy, but one of the things I do, especially with tweeting, especially when it's like with topical jokes, but with any joke, what I always try to do is, and I forget who said it or how many people said it, but like they always say, always look for the third joke.
Okay.
Go for the third joke. Don't go for the first joke, because the first joke is the obvious joke that everybody's gonna get. And I always give it like, so it's when Chris Christie was governor of New Jersey, the first joke when he did something wrong or he was in the news, the first joke was always a fat joke, right? Oh, he's so fat that blah, blah, blah. Oh, he probably went to McDonald's after this, but whatever, And A, that's kind of bush league, but B, it's like, That's the joke that everybody's going to think of.
Yeah.
Don't do that joke because you're going to get lost in the noise because everybody's going to make a fat joke. So then it's like, what's the second joke? Okay, the second joke is, well, he's from New Jersey. New Jersey's kind of trashy. Jersey Shore, whatever. You know, so it's like, okay, don't do that joke because there's going to be, instead of 100 people, there's going to be 10 people who think of that.
Yeah.
So I always so then it's like, go to the third joke.
Okay.
What's that other thing that people aren't going to think of?
Yeah.
They compare to, because people are always like, you know, it's a compliment that I was like, whether it's on stage or on Facebook or Twitter, where people are like, how did you come up with that angle? Like, how does your brain work when you think of it? And a lot of it is that third joke thing where it's like, okay, I'm not going to do the obvious thing. Yeah. I'm going to do the third thing down the road that's a little less obvious because one of my least favorite things to do, and you know this, like, is I hate when people guess the punch, when an audience member can guess the punchline. If they do that, I'm like, I'm screwed. Like, I'm done with that joke, or I have to retool it somehow. Yeah. So I always, it's all about surprises, you know. So it's like I always want to surprise them, like come out of left field or come at them with a right hook because I need to keep them guessing. Yeah. So like with that, what I'll do like with that dog joke is like, you know, it's like, how do I extrapolate it out? So it's like, okay, I'm kind of done with the joke with becoming a dog optometrist. But then it's like, okay, I can go to this thing. It's like, I'm not going to go to the eye doctor now because I'm not wasting money. Yeah. So I can do this. And then it's like, what's my version of a cotton ball? And then I do that. So I just run through that. And I think I had a couple other pieces of that. And even the thing with the thing with the kickball at the end. Yeah. Sometimes it really goes well. Other crowds, like it's kind of lukewarm. Yeah. So it's like, it's really hard with me becoming the optometrist. So sometimes I'll even just like drop off that last part because if I know it's not a hot crowd, I'm like, it just doesn't have that same steam that the other ending does. So I'm just going to keep it that way.
Now, is each of your joke a 100% you joke from start to finish? Or kind of what I was maybe hitting at before was, do you run things by your wife or your brother? Are you calling Mary Rosinski up on the phone and saying, hey, am I not thinking of something? Or are you meeting with Pat House for coffee before you're at Helium and saying, can I work out something with you? Is there outside influences that have contributed to your jokes, or maybe on occasion, or maybe more frequently than I know, or always? I always run it by somebody and ask them for something right. I know. Where are you at?
I definitely bounce it off of Kim, and she's great with it. And she'll she'll be really good about like, I like this, whatever. And then there's the little crew of like where I'll text people, like definitely Mary Rosinski, like her and I are always banging stuff out. Yeah. James Heskey from New York.
I know of him. I know of him. Yeah.
So funny. So him. Sometimes Aaron Herzog in LA. The Philly people. House. David James. And Doogie Horner. Yep. Sometimes so like we'll go back and forth. Jake Matera sometimes too. Like Jake and I will do that, and I'll either text them or call them. And it's always the big two questions I ask. I always ask two: Is this funny? And have you heard it before? Okay. Because that's of course a big fear is like you don't want to steal somebody else's joke or step on somebody's idea because you can't get poisoned. You hear I hear Marc Sotomayor do a joke and then like 6 months later, I forget about it, but then kind of remember it, but not know it's yours and be like, I have this really funny idea about X, Y, and Z. Yeah. And then somebody's like, oh, yeah, Marc does. I always try to run it past a few comics of like, do you think this is funny? And I think usually we're like, I think it's those things where comedians were nice enough where we're not going to be like, no, that's not funny. But what I might do is like run like 4 jokes past, let's say Mary, and like the ones that she might really react to 2 of them. Like, she won't go, that's great. And she'll be like, oh, that one's funny too. Yeah. I'm like, that's her nice way of being like, it's probably not that funny. Like, okay. And I'll still maybe try it, but like, I'll zone in on like these 2. And like, I don't think we do a lot of like, sometimes we do. Like, I don't do a lot of like, either way of like giving or receiving like taglines or maybe in the moment, like after a show, be like, hey, it'd be a funny thing to say if you want to, like, you can say this. Yeah. But like, I don't sit down and be like, okay, here's the ideas. What do you think? How would you rewrite this? Like, we kind of do our own things, but like, it's just kind of reinforcement of like, am I in the ballpark? Yeah. And then like, yeah.
Cool, man. Well, thank you for sharing all that.
Yeah.
is there material you won't do? And what I mean by that is, let's say you come with a brilliant punchline on something, but do you go, that's not my brand, whether it's a racial joke or a sex joke or a political joke? If you come with a brilliant punchline, is it like, I'm not going to do it because that's not my brand, or is everything on the table?
You know, and I've definitely gotten better because there are jokes. There's even a couple of handful of jokes on my first album that I recorded in 2011 or 12 that like I wouldn't do anymore just because I'm like, oh, I shouldn't say the word midget. That's probably not something I should do. Or like, there's a couple other things that like where I'm like, oh, that's not. You know, obviously we're all, you know, developing as people, you know, the Me Too thing and just becoming a little bit more aware. So my guideline is and this is something I've always tried to do, but like, you know, you try and fail, but I always think of it as punching up instead of punching down. So it's like, I'm not going to punch down and like, am I going to make fun of a homeless person? It's like, why would I make fun of a homeless person? I could have a funny story about an interaction that I had maybe with a homeless person where I'm the butt of the joke or something like that. But yeah, so I try to think about it where like, I'll definitely think of a horrible joke, but like, I'm not going to do it on stage if I think it's going to be, if I'm punching down instead of punching up.
Okay.
Yeah. And by the way, I think one of the things, and again, I'm getting off topic, but
that's all right.
One of the things that I could hang my hat on, I think when I first started comedy, and this was just a point of pride and a point of showing that you're a good comic. Like you can have great jokes, but I always wanted to be prolific.
Yes.
Like I just wanted to be prolific, and I always wanted to have like you said, it's like, oh, you got 2 albums where the jokes were, and it's like I was always the guy who I didn't want to be a hack and have the same jokes each time, especially at open mic, because like first thing you want to do is you want to impress the other comics at first, right? And that's the only where. So if I came every Wednesday night and had the same jokes every Wednesday, and I saw people making fun of some other comics, being like, oh, it's the same jokes every week, that got drilled into me for better or worse, because there's a middle ground. But like each week I wanted to have almost brand new jokes. So I was always writing and I always wanted to have new jokes. And, you know, I would go to Helium and like every Tuesday night, for a decade, I probably missed maybe 10 or 15 open mics on a Tuesday night for the first, like I was always, but you had a lot of repeat customers. You obviously had the same comedians. I always wanted to have new jokes.
Okay.
So I just had this list. Now, the thing was, you had somebody like maybe like Steve Gerben, who was a really funny comic, one Philly's funniest. He and I would go up like around the same time. He would do for like months, he would do like the same 5 jokes and hone them and get them perfect. And they were so tight. And by the end of those times, and he, like the one year he won Philly's Funniest, because he just had that 6 minutes that was just airtight. Where I had, at the end of that 9 months or whatever, I had probably 25 new minutes. That was pretty mediocre. Do you know what I mean? Like I had a lot more jokes than him because I'm Mr. Prolific, but I wasn't honing them as much because I wasn't doing them. So, so I always like my thing was like I always wanted to be prolific and always be writing new stuff. So like that's another reason why like I can pull a joke. Okay, I was in Raleigh last year. Yeah. Let's make sure I'm doing brand new stuff this year.
Yeah. Now you've been doing comedy for 15 years, so obviously you're not going back to maybe the first 5 years of your set list and going through those. Would it physically pain you if I were to come over and just take those set lists and throw them in the garbage? Like you need to know that you have those set lists still?
Yeah, it's like a nice memento of like, of just like they are partially utilitarian and they partially are like, I think I still have that set list of my first show at Furries. Like it's there, you know, and it's like, wow, and like sometimes it's just funny to see and like half the, by the way, like I go back now and it's like, I always remember my jokes. I go back now and it's like, it'll just be like, folding chair face. I'm like, oh, I don't even know what that was. And like, it'll be on like a number of cards, like folding chair. I'm like, no idea what that joke was. But it is neat to go back. And I will say every once in a while, I will go back 10 years and just like, just for fun, pull out a couple and just be like, oh, I remember that joke. Yeah. I wasn't that good of a writer back then. Yeah. I think I have a new idea for that joke
Okay.
that nobody ever heard because I was just doing open mics,
Yeah.
and like I'll rewrite it and like try to expand it out. You know? Yeah.
Now, do you hope that whenever the day is that you pass away or whatever, that one of your kids will be like, I want Daddy's shoebox a set list? Is that also some reason that you keep it?
I think they're going to the incinerator. I think that it'll be like it's that goal of like, boy, he's going to become rich and famous someday, and then like people are going to buy these and auction them off or something like that. But yeah, I'm sure they'll be thrown. They'll be tossed.
I want to ask. Okay, so doing my research, I'm going to break away from the standard questions real quick. When I do my research, there was 3 common themes that have popped up anytime your name got placed somewhere, and that was Philly's Funniest Winner 2013. Deck in the Hall of Notes, and Bob Saget. Which of those 3 which of those 3 are you, do you think that is the reason that I am at an elite level in Philly comedy? Is it, which of those 3 would you hang your hat on as saying, this is what made me here?
It's so funny because it's 3 really good ones that I would probably list of like, not even like this was the moment, but this was the jumping off point kind of to a certain extent, where, I mean, Philly's Funniest was definitely like, I was definitely a punchline in Philly for years because I always came in third place.
Yep. That's
like, out of 250 people, I would always get the finals, or almost every year I was in the finals. And it was like, I would be coming third place. And I was like, it was always just, it was the big joke. And then when I finally won that was, and actually, I had taken a sabbatical. I'd taken a year off of school the year prior. I took a year off just to focus on comedy, and I won Philly's Funniest the night before I had to go back to school after a year off. And like the pressure was just like, if I go back, I have nothing to show, but I won that year.
Yeah.
And like, it was like, okay, to a certain extent, that year was worth it, even though Philly's Funniest is ridiculous or whatever. It's like, but it was a good jumping off point where it was like, okay, now I have that on my resume, or now maybe it'll lead to other things, which it did, you know, to a certain extent. So it was like, okay, I use that wisely. The Deck the Hall of Notes, was, I was working with John McKeever and Tommy Pope a lot at the time, who obviously were the other 2 guys on that.
Yeah.
And McKeever was the guy who got me my first TV writing job. And I think it was because Deck the Hall of Notes was really popular. I worked on other sketches with him that, you know, we worked well together. I think he saw that, you know, I was a good writer. I was professional. I could get stuff done.
Yeah.
And he got a writing job like 3 years after that, maybe. And then they needed another writer on the show, and they just asked the writing room. They're like, hey, do you guys know anybody? And he's like, yeah, I got a guy. And so that was kind of like my into like outside of stand-up, like writing, and then like getting on, you know, kind of, you know, working with him, having a relationship with him. And then that started my TV writing career when I've written on a couple little shows, and that was definitely stuff of that. And then Saget was, I mean, he's the greatest guy, and he's always been so nice to me and like treated me and my wife so well. And he was the one who got me, I did the Borgata with him. I did a couple really big gigs with him. One of them was the Borgata, and he got me tickets to see the Beach Boys.
That's right.
Friends with the Beach Boys. Yeah. The night before, and I got to bring my parents backstage to meet the Beach Boys. Yes. And it was like their favorite band. It's my dad's favorite band of all time. I got him to meet the Beach Boys, or the ones that are still alive. Yeah. And it was just like, it was that night, was a Friday night. I got them backstage with Borgata, and they met the Beach Boys. The next night, they got to meet Bob for the first time. Yeah. So they got to meet Bob. And Bob could have been nicer. It was like hugging him and just like, my dad and he both worked in grocery stores, and had that in common. It was just, and that was the weekend that my parents were like, again, that cautiously optimistic kind of like supportive. That was the weekend where they're like, okay, your dumb jokes got us to meet the Beach Boys. I think you're good. Like it's and like 9 months later is when I got that job offer from McKeever's show. Yeah. And I was like, I'm gone. I'm good. Yeah. Quit teaching.
I had written down the Beach Boys thing specifically because you had, when I read that in that, I think Philly Mag interviewed you. It was right after your win, I think, at Philly's Funniest, and they had that question came up, and this is kind of what I was leading to in the first part of this was you specifically mentioned that you got your dad back in there. Yeah. Do you feel that when you did that, you finally got your maybe specifically your dad, but your parents' approval? Is that what you desperately sought out? And by doing this, you know, at whatever age you were at that time in your mid to late 20s, do you think
Yeah.
that's what this whole journey was about, from being that awkward, shy kid, and now your dad is meeting the Beach Boys? Like, hey, you have a son named Chip too, and now you give me all this. Is that kind of why you do stand up comedy, for that Beach Boys moment?
That was a big part of it. And it was like, and again, like my parents have always been like super supportive of everything I've done. And, comedy, they come out to shows all the time and they always supported me with it. And like their main holdback was like, look, you went to college, you have a good job with steady pay, you have a retirement. It's like, why would you leave that out of fear, which is totally understandable. It wasn't like, don't quit your day job, kid. It was like, don't quit your day job because you have this good thing. Keep doing comedy on the side. But that was a big moment where it was like, I could give something back to them, where it was like this is something that I could do, and it did sort of, like, I always felt supported and loved, like validated, but like that was a moment where it was like, and then actually Beach Boys related too. It was funny. A couple years later, my brother and I took my parents to see Brian Wilson at the Tower Theater for their anniversary or something like that, from the Beach Boys, Brian Wilson from the Beach Boys. And we had these seats and they were okay seats. They were just regular seats. Yeah. And I walk in and I know a bunch of people from Live Nation, just through the Punchline and through a couple other different gigs that I've done. And we're walking through the lobby. We're about to go to our seats, and I see the one manager, and I was like, "Oh, hey man." He's like, "Oh, hey Chip, how you doing?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, we brought our parents. We're here to see Brian Wilson. We've seen him a bunch of times. He has this for kids and all. We're all excited." He's like, "Oh," he's like, "Where are your seats?" And he showed him. He's like, "No." He's like, "Come back here." And he brought the four of us to this VIP area that had like free food and drinks, and we had like our own seats in this like box. And it was just like, and that was like another moment where it was like, it's like, okay, it's like I can give something back to them of like, and they see, and it's like, oh wow, like he's doing something. And it really is about that. Like, again, just being part of the scene. Like it wasn't like, oh, we got something for free, but it was like, I know a guy, again, going back to like my brother's thing with the Fergie's thing. It's like, I know the bartenders now. I know the owner. I know these cool musicians. It's like, just being in the community, being seen, and being like, I know a guy. Like that's to me. That's okay. That, and then to be able to share that with my family too is great.
Yeah. Now, I got 6 more points here I want to go over. Some of them are probably just quick answers, but this first one I probably shouldn't have waited to the end to ask you this. But are the jokes that you write from real experiences that you've had, or experiences that you either observed or made up just because you thought they'd be funny? And I said, I'm sorry, this is a loaded question because I wrote down a specific joke that I want to ask you based on your answer, if this is the case.
Okay. I'd say most of them are, at least jumping off points, were something that I either experienced or observed. Yeah.
Okay, so you have one joke on each album. The first one is X marks the spot, and the second one is defensive wounds, which both allude to the fact that either you're going to commit suicide or someone killed you. That's probably the best case scenario. Are these real things that happened in your life? Or that depression or suicidal thoughts or?
No. And it's so funny how, like, you know me, like I'm not the edgiest comic in the world, and I literally made a conscious effort to open both of my albums with suicide jokes, which is just ridiculous. But no, I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think. I think it was just like, because I like being dark. I like, so it's like, if I can take something very serious and make it silly, like, like my grandmother's funeral, let's make it silly. So it's like, if I can take this thing and make it silly, that's what I love to do. So so for those two, those aren't really based in.
Okay, all right. Just want to make sure.
Maybe they're like thoughts I had, like, again, like the latest one where it's like, I'm at the point where it's like, whatever. You know what I mean? It's like, you just have that thing where it's like, I'm not going to kill myself. I'm just going to try some murdering. That's fine. Yeah.
Okay. I was just curious.
Yeah.
All right. Which leads me into point 5 of 6 points here, which is, let's talk about your albums. So Both albums are fantastic. I'm going to link them here to the show notes so people can just click on them and buy them. Or I mean, I own both of them on iTunes, which is great. But obviously, it's a great title for an album. It's catchy. Right. People will look. They're not familiar with who you are, and they see Swingers Party, and then look again to see what the heck's going on. But why Swingers Party versus any of the other jokes on there?
It was one of those things where it's like a fun title, and it's like a lot of the jokes that I do, as you've probably seen, about like sexual jokes aren't really about sex. Like some people talk about sex and they get really graphic. Like mine, I make it very cartoonish, so it's like Swingers Party sounds like a 1960s, 70s, whatever. And I kind of wanted that. My wife, who used to be a graphic designer, is an amazing graphic designer. She created the
artwork does look 60s with the triangles and those technicolors, or whatever they call them back then.
Exactly. That's what I wanted it to look like. That kind of like hip swinging, and like I had I was wearing a suit on stage for because that was actually taken at Bananas Up. The picture was taken at Bananas Up in actually Joey Sesky took that picture at Bananas Up in North Jersey. But like it kind of had, and I wanted kind of like that 50s, 60s like jazz album, like kind of vibe to it, like there's mid-century. So that was this, Mad Men kind of thing. So that was the theme that I wanted, and I was like, Swingers Party just kind of fits that. It's fun. Okay. It just works. Yeah.
Now, how did you know it was right to record your first album? How many years were you doing comedy before you were like, did someone approach you and ask you for the album? But you're like, hey, I want to kind of treat this as like my final project in school. Like this is all the work I've done up to this point. What was the hammer that dropped that was like, I'm doing an album?
Yeah, I kind of forget. I don't know if it was Ben at Helium who like suggested that I do it, or Marc at Helium that suggested I do it. But I had a lot of I had an hour's worth of material, a little over an hour's worth of material, and it was like. There wasn't a lot of people in Philly who had done it. I might have been like the first person kind of like in our class, let's say, to do it. But I think it was an opportunity just for me to headline for a night at Helium. And again, let's go back to this right here and like my music background. And like, again, my brother had his band put out an album, and it was like, not even just that, but it's like, I just respected music so much, and it was like, if I could do this thing, and they're offering me this night, or we talked about it to do this night, and it's like, and again, this is when CDs were still selling, like, it was so funny when I started selling it, like they were selling like hotcakes after shows. Like I'd sell 10 or 15 a show easy, and then like after about a year and a half, it just stopped because nobody was buying CDs then. But like just have that artifact of like, look what I did. Like, this is something that like, I made. It's like I could have almost walked away from comedy forever after that, because it's like, I got this. I made this thing. It's out there in the world. It's a CD, just like Pink Floyd or Pearl Jam or Pavement or Built to Spill or whatever. It's like they put out. Oh, I got them right here. They put out albums. It's like I could have one too. You know what I mean? It's like I have this, and like my favorite thing in the world was, of course, this is a dying breed, but like record stores, like going to record stores to look for CD, and it's like, if I could be a part of that. That was all.
Now, for your second album, Swingers Party, did you do CDs again? Did you do digital downloads? Like, are you selling? I know you can get it online, which is probably where you're getting the most revenue / hits from. But are you also selling them after shows? And if you are, in what format are you selling them in now these days?
I'm actually not. For a while I was thinking like, how am I going to do this? And then then of course the lockdown happened, so I wasn't doing it at all. But yeah, no, I did not make CDs this time, just because people don't buy. As much as I would love the artifact, they don't do that. You can do the download cards. We were thinking about that, but like, even with that, with comedy albums, it's hard. Like, unless you're a real fan, it's. Most people are listening on Spotify or Apple Music, where they can just listen to it once and then stream it. That's it. And actually, the one place that really where I've made by far the most money that I made on this album was I produced it. Helium Records produced it. I was actually they started like a record label. I was the first comedian that they.
Oh, awesome!
I was sort of guinea pig. I was the first one.
Yeah.
And they now have a relationship with Sirius XM. And so they got my album on Sirius XM.
Oh, sweet.
And I've got plays on Sirius. And that actually has made me way more money than like album sales or anything like that.
Okay.
Because the streaming, it's so minimal. But with getting it on the radio there, on digital radio, like it's satellite radio, it's like they actually pay really well.
Okay. So Ben or Mark approaches you to do an album. Did you think you were ready to do an album the first time, the Crossing the Adonis album? Were you nervous that like maybe that they're pushing you into something that you're not ready for yet, or did you know you're ready?
I was nervous, but I was ready. Like I knew I had the time. I knew I had like well over an hour's worth of material.
Yeah.
And I was ready to do it. The biggest, I think both times, the biggest scare is, am I ready as far as are people going to come out and see me?
Yeah.
Do I have a fan base? Do I have people that will come out to see me? That was, I knew I could do the time.
Yeah.
But it was like, can I fill an audience to make it sound good? You know, it's like if I only get 40 people to come out, that's not going to sound very good.
Yeah.
You know, so, and again, until the night of, I was sweating it. I didn't know how many people, like there were some advanced sales, but like, and I was lucky. Helium holds about 250, I think.
Yeah.
I was like, if I got, and like I was calling out all my friends and family, like, you know, calling out all the stops, you know, this is the time to come see me. If you want to come, you have months, plan it, here's the time. My goal was if I had less than 100, I would have been a little embarrassed, you know. I was shooting for 150. I was like, if I can get over 150, like I'd be gold. That night, I think I had 240 people show up. Like,
awesome.
I was super lucky. And after that, like everything else was just easy. I was like, I got this.
Yeah. Now, was that album shot in one shot? Like, was there a second show that was edited in with the like, or is that just from start to finish, just 1 hour that you did?
Both of them are just start to finish.
Okay.
My plan was, and it was just out of, I would have loved to have done 3 or 4 shows, but like I just don't have that quote unquote fan base of like, I can sell out, or it's not sell out, but I can get a good crowd at Helium one night. I can't do it 4 nights in a row, or even twice, maybe twice, but like it still won't be that great. So that was a big pressure because it was like, I have one chance.
Yeah.
If the sound system goes bad, or if I stumble over a bunch of stuff, if there's a drunk in the crowd.
Yeah.
And I just had to remind myself, somebody told me, they're like, look, if it doesn't go well, just wait and do it in 6 months again.
Yeah.
You know, like whatever.
Yeah.
So I tried to take that pressure off me, but I went, the plan was I'm going to record a little bit over an hour. I thought I had about an hour and 10 or something like that. And then I'll edit it down to 45.
Okay.
That was the plan. Start with the hour. And at the time, my good buddy Alex Dingley, who he's actually recorded a lot of other people too. It was before Helium Records. He recorded it. He did everything for me. Recorded it, mastered it, the whole thing. And I went up and I did the hour, and then I did the same thing the second time for my second album. I edited out one joke. There was a joke I did. It was like the second joke I did after the kill yourself joke. Yeah. And I did one, and it was just kind of like it was just a little joke just about the way, it was like about my haircut or something like that. And it didn't get that great of a response. Like it was fine, but it wasn't, but everything else did really well. And I was like, I don't want to lose momentum right away if somebody's listening to the album and be like, oh, this second joke didn't go well. So I just took out that joke, but everything else was as it was.
Now, did you feel the pressure to, once those albums were made and you were selling them and people were downloading your albums, that when someone saw you, right after that drop happened, that Chip Chantry needs another hour of new material? Or were you comfortable doing the same jokes for future months and then selling the same CD after the show kind of thing?
And that became a thing of like, you know, with Chappelle and Louis C.K. and all, where it was like, we're doing a new hour every year, or even every 6 months or whatever, and then just burning material and moving on. And it's like, I didn't have that luxury, but I did have the luxury of nobody knew who the hell I was. So I could go to any town and like, so it's always been an evolution of like, when I write new stuff, old stuff gets pushed out. I write new stuff again. So I definitely tried to write a little bit more after that album. And really, I think I really took it more to heart after the second album, because I finished my second album at the end of August of 2018, and like 3 weeks later I was in LA writing on it TV show for like 6 months. So like pretty much like I recorded the album, and then I don't know if I even did any more shows. I was in LA then and was basically doing very little stand-up because I had this writing gig that was like a very long hours and all. So I came back 6 months later. That's when I dropped the album. And then I was like, it's kind of a nice natural break where I really wanted to focus. And in that 6 months, I had written stuff, but I hadn't really tried it out that much. So I was like, I really want to make an effort to like try to burn as much of that as possible. I definitely still use some of it. Yeah. But I really tried to write as much as I could, and like came back, hit the ground running when I came back to Philly, and just really tried to write as much as I could to like get a new. And I have, from the end of 2018, like I have almost a new hour ready to go again. But but then again, when are we ever going to do it? So.
I know, man. Cool. Well, I want to thank you for sitting down with me, and I want to thank you for your time. The last one I want to do is, what would you like to plug? So just to let you know, I will be linking both albums so people can download them to this, linking your website, linking the Decked and Hall & Notes video that you did. With those to the side, anything else that you think that what you want to plug that I should have on here?
Sure. Obviously just follow me on social media, Instagram and Twitter, especially at Chip Chantry, both of those. And it's been a long time coming, but we've recorded a few episodes. We're about ready to start. Mary Rudzinski and I have a new podcast coming out called Chip, Marry, Kill. Okay. We actually have, they are up on social media. We haven't released anything, but we do have the handles and everything at Chip, Marry, Kill. Okay.
What's that about? Like, what's the podcast about?
So basically what we do is we each take, you know the game, Fuck, Marry, Kill. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. So Chip, Marry, Kill. Yeah. We had the name for the longest time without even doing that. We just thought it was a funny title. Barry came up with it. I thought it was a great title. But what we do is each week we each bring 3 topics to the table. Either I bring 3 topics and she brings 3 topics that we don't know about. We don't know about ahead of time. So like I'll give her like 3 people or 2 people and a place or an event and a person and a movie or something like that. And I give a little bit of background on each one. Each week the listener will get like 6 topics that they learn just a little something about. And it's like we try to make it fun, interesting topics.
That's really cool. And I'm sorry, how can we watch that or listen to that?
So we've recorded a couple episodes so far. We're hopefully going to be dropping it, within the next few weeks and like starting. We just wanted to bank a couple of episodes before we start officially releasing. But people can find us on. We have a Twitter account and Instagram and Facebook and all.
All right, cool. I'm going to do that right after I get off the phone with you here, dude. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate your time. You're the best.
Thanks for having me, man. It's so much fun.
But thank you so much, sir, and I'll let you know what's going.
It was great to see you, man.
Yeah, I know, man. I know, dude. Stay safe, man. I hope you guys are doing. You guys are doing okay. No COVID hitting you guys. That's good.
Yeah, we're good. Yeah, how about you guys?
We're doing all right. We had a little scare with someone that my wife works with, but that ended up being just a ploy to get 2 weeks paid vacation. So, but thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man.
And I'll talk to you soon. And good luck. And I know you mentioned a little bit back and forth about something. I hope it works out, and good luck, sir. Okay?
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Yeah.
All right,
man. I'll talk to you soon.
See you, buddy. Bye.
All right. That was our interview with Chip Chantry. One of the best interviews we've done. So much important information and gems in there for anyone looking to improve how they're writing jokes and how they perform them. I suggest that you listen to it again because, like myself, I heard things the 3rd and 4th time listening to this that I didn't get the first couple times. Thank you, Chip, so much for just laying it all out there and giving everything you had away so that people can be better at this craft. And next week is our final interview, so I hope you've been enjoying these. Please subscribe to this channel, and we'll see you next Monday. Take care.
You guys been a lot of fun. Enjoy the rest of the show. Have a good night.